So let's take a deeper look at the financial metrics that matter. As I indicated on the screen, we have a series of financial metrics that matter, and I'm going to show you, give you an overview of this page and actually show you how you can configure for your own metrics that matter if you wish to change these. We've selected out of the box a few things that you may want to be tracking, things like revenue, your percentage of recurring service revenue. So if you're looking to focus in on one specific type of revenue, this allows us to see where I'm at in terms of percentage to goal. Cost of goods, so how much labor or costs are going in to deliver this specific revenue. This isn't operating expenses like sales, but it's the time that's been spent to fulfill those contracts. Your gross margin and gross margin percentage, which was basically the difference, gross margin being the difference between the revenue and the cost of goods sold, the money that's left over. Operating expenses that are coming in from the regular time that's being spent, that's allocated to expenses. So this is your sales or your administration costs. EBITDA, basically your earnings before taxes, depreciation. Basically showing you again the subtraction of the net difference of the operating expenses. We also do some analysis for you, and you're going to be able to configure these yourselves, but average revenue per client. So what was your total revenue divided by the number of clients that you had revenue for that month. Accounts over with over $10,000 in revenue, so the sheer number. It's telling me at 13 customers I invoiced over $10,000. You're going to be able to change these numbers for different thresholds if you wish. The total amount of revenue that came in, percentage of revenue that's coming in from those larger customers. So this would be really kind of interesting. How am I going up market? And then accounts where, in terms of the margin, the revenue minus the cost of goods sold, where I lost money for this specific month. How many customers is it that the cost of providing that service, whether it be a fixed price or a recurring service, the total cost spent on servicing the customer was less than they paid me in that month. And you really want to keep an eye on that, and then take a look at whether or not there's consistent customers where that's the case. Normally it's the case if you're a recurring service where you will have contracts where you have some months I win, some months I lose based on what happens, but this allows you to actually kind of see that. We provide a specific month total. You can use the pull down here to actually select a different month if you wish to. So if I wanted to actually say I'm interested in September, I would see September. I'd also see year to date, January to the first month to the selected month for the year to date total. One of the things that you'll see on the config screen, and I'll just go over there quickly and show it to you, is that you can specify your starting fiscal month and year for the current fiscal year. So I could actually say that really I'm interested in not January, but I start in March, and then basically year to date the selectors would then change for that. You can also specify the year that's your starting fiscal year. So next year you can just change the tally. When you make a modification here, you update, and then all of your graphs will then change for that. And we'll be showing that more in depth in the config video. I want to make reference to that. So coming back to the metrics that matter, I can select an individual month, and then what I see is I see that month, I see what the target was for that individual month, and I see anything where I missed my target. I also see year to date. So basically, in this case, since it's January, this is January through September, what the actual was, what the planned cumulative target would have been. So I know where I'm at, and then I see a comparison of what the difference was between the previous month. So I'm seeing that this was actually 10,000 above the previous month, so I went up 10,000. I see a trend for the current fiscal year. So basically this is showing me in this case, because I'm starting at January, and I can see I peaked, and the red mark indicates which month actually has the highest value. So the nice thing about this is that I can kind of see is I've had a gradual curve in terms of all of these points, but I may want to look down and say, okay, you also may have the case where percentage of revenue that came in over 10,000 was actually highest in the beginning of the year. So actually, it looks like, there's January, February, March. March actually had the highest. And I can actually see the accounts where the margin, where I lost money, has actually been decreasing. So it's actually, again, January was the month where I lost, where I had the most in terms of it. And you can go down through and you can actually select the month and go back to the month, and you can actually see 13 clients. 13 clients. So that was why that was higher. Now I'm down to 6. So again, the thing is that when you choose January, you won't see a comparison to the previous month because it's not part of the current fiscal year. It's only when you actually start moving in and actually start changing that data. So that shows you kind of the trending month. You can kind of drill in and see a specific month and why something happened. In fact, I could actually choose here March because I have this month here and say, what happened in March. I can 44%. It's like the revenue that came from over. Now, one of the things you'll see is that I had major increases in revenue, but I had revenue of $375,000. And 163 of it came from accounts that provided me over $10,000. So 44% of my revenue came from those large customers. And it may have been that I had some big fixed price contracts or whatever. And then what I have is this indication of whether for specific months I met plan or not. Now, one of the things you might want to look at is that this actually only has demo data through September. There is nothing for January. So when it's saying I haven't missed my plan, my revenue numbers haven't gotten above my plan numbers for the month. So if I haven't gotten into the month, it's basically just telling me that I'm not working. I'm not finishing it, and I'm still outside the goal. So one of the things you'll see on the net differences too is this shows the change, but it also has an indicator that it was all in the up direction. So I can immediately go in and see, okay, that was a good month because everything went up in March. But I can also choose a month and say, okay, what's the difference? Well, no net change from the previous month. This month it went down. The percentage went down a little bit. It went from 83 to 0. I can see no net change. This went down by 200, but everything else went up. So I get that kind of visual indicator. Pretty nice. So these are the metrics that matter, but this is only representing data that's actually coming right from your Fiscal Current tab. And I'm going to go over to the Fiscal Current tab and we'll take a look at some of this data, and I'll show you how it gets calculated. Because on the Fiscal Current tab, one of the things you'll see is that right at the top there is a metrics that matter and a year-to-date metrics that matter section. Now, these aren't calculations, but really what all these fields do is they actually simply reference another field, which is an analysis field on the page. So in building these things, in this case revenue, it basically just said equal to, it's a standard spreadsheet, the revenue that's down here. Now that allows us to bring in that total revenue. And one of the things that people might also be interested in is this is basically showing me the total revenue that came in from Autotask, right? But it also could be that what you want to do is there may be certain things that you sell, and maybe that you don't have all of your hardware sales, or there may be some additional revenue from your company that you don't put in. And one of the things you can see highlighted in green is that you can put those numbers in. So in fact, I could say, you know what, I'm going to manually enter in the fact that we got to $10,000, right? And the fact that I actually modify the P&L section and put in the sections that are highlighted to manually enter in data, I can put in the fact that I got 10,000. Now you'll actually see is that rather than 173, my metrics that matter for January would have had the 183. And now I'm even farther above my plan. So that's how you may want to recognize revenue that isn't within Autotask. Likewise, you can do the same thing for any cost of goods sold that you have. So if you're not recognizing kind of things like the cost of remote monitoring services, and you want to just put in a standard monthly fee for that to represent that, because that's one of your cost of goods sold. And then if you're not recognizing all of your operating expenses, rent and things like that, that basically you don't distribute out in a burden rate for your people, you can put that here in terms of your operating. But really allows us to build up and say, here's the data that we have from Autotask, and here's the data that you may actually be summarizing in the accounting system and put it in for planning purposes. So that's how you would kind of put in that information. But again, coming back to the metrics that matter, each one of these fields is simply being used to reference another field. In this case, if I wanted recurring service revenue, you're actually seeing is that it's just referencing a line down here for recurring service revenue. And I'll change this in a second just to show you how easily you can change. Suppose rather than recurring service revenue, I was really kind of more interested in my fixed price contracts. So maybe I said, what's really important to me is my fixed price contracts. And what I just do is reference that field in the same field, and then I'm just going to copy and paste across those fields. So that's my fixed price work. Now I'm looking at what's really important to me is my fixed price work, and I can go over here and say, fixed price, fixed revenue, okay, fixed contract revenue, and I can say percentage of fixed contract revenue. What I wound up doing is you can kind of see fixed revenue, percentage of fixed price revenue. That's the cumulative totals year to date. And if I went back to my metrics that matter, I have my fixed rev, I have my percentage of fixed rev, and I have the totals here. Now, of course, my targets are all wrong now because I'm not, and I'm missing my targets because these were all based on recurring service revenue. So let's go back, and so now we have new targets, new actuals. I'll show you how you basically set your targets, and there's a whole section here where for your targets you can specify your individual targets. So you specify whether or not your target should be over or under. Like my target is to keep under $100,000 in cost of goods sold. My target is for revenue to be over 170, 170, 500, 500 as part of my plan. So I put those numbers in individually, but I can specify the over and under. I want to have accounts where I lost money to be under 5 accounts for the course of the year. So I can specify over and under, whether or not it's a positive revenue or it's a negative an expense, and then I put the actual numbers in. So one of the things you kind of see, you can kind of see is that what I've been doing in terms of my fixed revenue is I started around 40 and I've got upwards of 80. So suppose what I wound up doing simply is come over here and I say, okay, what I want to do is I want to be over 40,000. Okay, and the minute I do that, one of the things you'll see is over here on my MET plan, I see that the first month met and everything else didn't. And I can even go over to metrics that matter, and I can see, okay, I'm now actually on plan, both for the year and the month. And I can go into that financial current and basically specify what I want as a target for every month by putting in a number. So I can say 50. And in fact, I may want to copy across and say my target was 50 all the way through the year. Maybe I felt like August should be a great month, and I'll put in 90. So what do I wind up seeing? I see over here, I made the first month, I missed the second month, I missed that one that I had 90 for, and I don't have any revenue for the last 3 months of the year. The nice thing too here is I see the trend here, also on this page. I also see how much money I had per quarter, so I can see that on a quarterly basis I'm going up, and this is within the system. And then I also see kind of the year-to-date number, which is basically everything added up for the entire year, and I can see quarterly numbers. So it's kind of a helpful, and you'll see that for each one of the sections here down below, where I can see my revenue growing or my revenue remaining the same for each area. I can go down through and look at how I've been doing quarterly and also over the course of each individual month. So a good indication there. So I want to making those modifications, and again, I'll see the changes here on the financial current page, but I'll also see it on the metrics page. And there, I'm seeing how I'm doing in terms of recurring service revenue. I can actually choose individual months that I want to take a look at and see, okay, I had 70K, I want to be over 50, I want to be over 340, I'm actually 388, and I can kind of see what the net change happens to be each month. So really easy to use. Now, one of the things is that I didn't change my target for my fixed price. So, it's like I was expecting to be having recurring service revenue be over 70%. It is. So I'm only at 11%. I could likewise go in and modify my targets for my percentages to be more in line with the targets that I'm actually receiving. And that really is kind of a summary of how you would modify your individual metrics. These sections can be set up so, again, they can reference any of the data down below. So if you're looking at specific areas or drilling into specific types of expenses or specific ratios, because maybe we were looking at everything over 100,000. When we go into the trending, presentation, I'll show you actually how you can change these revenue ranges, because that's also a lot of things that we graph. And so rather than you may want to be looking at 1 to 50. I'm sorry, 1 to 500 or 1 to 10,000, based on your ranges of your data. You can specify those kind of accounts and kind of set that kind of up in terms of the margin ranges, so that you can kind of look at that information. So we'll show that in a later video. Again, metrics that matter, very helpful. We also have a video that shows you how you can actually copy and put all of this into PowerPoint for presentation purposes, so that if you can have it in your workbook, but you can also have it in PowerPoint, and that's another tutorial that we have that you might be interested in. Again, at a glance view, where I'm meeting plan, where I'm not. Here I'm not meeting the plan. I can get an instant view of that. As I move into a specific month, or I close a specific month, I can see how I'm doing in the month, or I can see how well I did for a specific month by simply clicking on here, seeing the trend, seeing what needs to be focused on about meeting the plan. And that is the financial metrics that matter. Thank you.